Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And you know what? We are those lifelong learners. And, Camden and I, when we're scheduling our guests on our show, sometimes people can't make it. And then as this date approached and we were talking with future guests, got a lot of good ones coming up, folks. As we're there's your teaser. As we were talking about our guests, I said, you know what? It's been a long time since we just done a Cam and Otis show. So we're going to do, or maybe this should be a Otis and Cam on the Cam and Otis show, just to play with words.
There we go.
Can't say it the same way every time because then it sounds like I'm just repeating myself.
Exactly.
And what what I've discovered over the years, talking with my my fellow Green Beret brothers and folks who ain't, that's a very broad category because it is a huge category of people, folks that ain't Green Berets, who really don't know what Green Berets do, and there's a lot that goes into it. And I'll just start with a short history lesson. I won't go into detail because I'll probably get things wrong, and then I'll get lots of phone calls from all my brothers from the regiment. But Green Berets came really. I mean, you can go all the way back to the lineage of Rogers Rangers in the French and Indian Wars prior to the Revolution, and then Rogers Rangers during the Revolution, and how they used unconventional tactics to fight against in the Revolutionary War against the British, in the French and Indian War against the French. But where it really kind of the direct lineage comes from is the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services was the name during World War II. And they put together the OSS, their primary tool was the Jedburgh teams. And these were 6 guys that jumped into France, infiltrated into France prior to D-Day. And today, folks, and we don't disclose it very often on what day we're actually recording, but today is the 80th? No, the 90th. No, 80th. I was right the first time. Public math. Nope, I'm still messing it up. D-Day, 89th. No, because D-Day is June 6, 1944. So this is the 79th. Yep.
There we go. Hey, public math.
We got it out. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Reasoner, my elementary school 5th grade teacher. The 89th anniversary of D-Day. And so if you think about D-Day, everybody knows about what happened on the 6th of June, but many months before, we inserted men into France to link up and develop the underground, the French underground as it was known, AKA the insurgency, the guerrillas, the French guerrillas who were fighting against the Nazis. That's the direct lineage of the Green Berets. And then we founded in 1952, the 10th Special Forces Group. And the irony of it all, I always love this part. And a friend of mine reminded me of this the other day. The reason we said it was the first one, the only one at the time in 1952, the 10th, is because we wanted the Soviet Union to think, ooh, there's 10 of them like this. It was actually a ruse. So well played, Mr. Colonel Banks, the founder, the first group commander. But
I actually got a question, because I think this will help with where we're building as we build this, perspective into business. You talking about the Jedburgh teams and building up, and also I was surprised. Wouldn't it be La Resistance? Hey, come on, we're talking France here. At least that's the name I always see. But you have this situation where you need a different set of solutions, right? Can you talk a little bit about why it was so significant, or why what the Jedburgh teams did was so significant relative to D-Day, relative to the the Allied war machine, and what it was happening in Europe at that
Well,
time.
what's interesting is the fact that they didn't do a lot. It's like not like they were taking out Nazi divisions, but the little things they did caused a couple of had a broader effect. Is really what happened. So you take out a railway that slows down resupply, and if you're doing something with in violence, let's say you blow up the railway, right? So now not only does that resupply of troops and ammunition, food get delayed or have to go other means, which means it still is delayed. Now I've got to take soldiers, Nazi soldiers, off the front line that are defending the coastline because the Nazis they were pretty sure what was about to happen, right? So now I've got to take even one guy off the line. Think about the difference that you can make just in that one little change. So that's the other effect. And then the third effect is now they're not focused on one area. Now they're worried about what's going on in the rear. You know, hey, if I'm driving back to the headquarters for a meeting, am I going to get ambushed? It's no longer, here's the line, them on this side, us on that side. It's no longer that. And that's the difference. And the reason the Allied created the Jedburghs was to support the French resistance, because they've been supporting them for quite some time, but they wanted to up the level of support and effect they could have. And then knew that you couldn't do it with a normal, regular old infantry platoon. I mean, back in World War II, even the airborne guys, the Band of Brothers show, which is a phenomenal show that teaches history about World War II and D-Day. But even that was this highly specialized skill set of very few people. And taking it even further into that very specialized skill set of what the Jedburghs did and who they were undercover behind enemy lines, and making that this small group having a massive strategic effect, which I think leads to one of the things that Green Berets do. We can take a very small element of men and put them someplace in the world, whether it's to overthrow a government or support a government, kind of the two sides of the coin. And those guys can have their tactical operations have a strategic effect. That's what Green Berets do, they understand that the actions that they take, the very small actions that they take alone and unafraid, to use a joke that we used to talk about, but because they're so well trained and understand the bigger picture, they know that taking this action without having to be told to or build up, being given very broad guidelines, they know that certain kinds of action can have very, very strong strategic effect going forward.
Now, I think that kind of hints into then going back to the rest of the history lesson there, talking about the 10th Special Forces Group, and, even though it was the first group and those kind of things, is it gets to really what, to put it into a simple phrase, it's playing the chess, not checkers, right? And I want to ask so you're obviously selecting the best of the best. That's the first step to it. But then what is different once you're actually there? Because, we talk about, it's almost like a comparison, like an all-star team. Like you have an all-star team, you can throw together, oh my gosh, easy examples. U.S. basketball teams at the Olympics, right? There's been years where we blow them out of the water and nobody can even touch us. And then there's years where we get destroyed for no reason, right? And it's not because the skill level is that different. There's always a LeBron, there's always a Michael Jordan, there's always a Kobe, whoever it is. Like there's always that ridiculous skill level. It's about what they do once they're actually there that makes them such a strong team. When you think back to the Dream Team. What did y'all do inside of the team that took it to that next level where you were already at the top, but it went to a whole other level?
Well, that's the power of the team. And that's one of the things, that's truthfully the secret sauce of a Green Beret is the team. The individual, you're spot on. The individuals, they're triple volunteers, we call them. They volunteer for the Army, volunteer for airborne school, and volunteer to try out to be a Green Beret. And there's a great song, the famous Ballad of the Green Berets by Barry Sadler. And, there's a lot of truth to that song. 100 men will test today, but only 2 will wear the Green Beret. There's so much truth to that, because even people that volunteer that third time and they take the walk don't always get selected. So
I think, sorry, I just want to cut you off for a second. The 100 men will test today, only 2 win a Green Beret. I think you and I once went down a rabbit hole and did a test. I think it's even less than that. Like, I don't think 2 out of 100 get it.
Yeah.
just to give a little bit of a measure of how difficult it is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you take the full gambit of people that, submit a packet, if you will, that's, step one in volunteering. They submit a packet. They have to get approved in that point. And then they go to a selection event, and they have to make it through that, and be selected. Just because you make it to the end doesn't mean that you are chosen. And then you got to go through all the training and make it through that successfully. So yeah, there's a lot of filters. And what happens is it's an interesting dynamic, because the reason we refer to it, the larger group, as the regiment and the brotherhood, is because we all went through this similar suck of getting there. And one of the things that I learned very, very early in life is the fact that misery loves company. And the more miserable, the more suck you endure, the closer you become with the people who are enduring the suck with you. And the uniqueness of the Green Berets is that they may not have gone through the same training or the same course or even the same year or decade, but it's a validation that they've gone through that. Matter of fact, I had a chat with a guy this morning who went through the Q course 10, maybe 15 years after me, but it was also like, we're the same guys. We've hung out, because it breeds, not only is you have to get to that point, but it shapes you further into becoming a Green Beret and that commonality. Mm-hmm. So that's how you get to the team room. Yeah. Now back to the answering the question. Once you're in the team room, you still got to prove yourself, but you also have to become a member of a team. And probably 98% of the time nowadays, you're not starting a team from scratch. So the team is already there. It has a culture. It has leadership. It has the strong and the weak guys. But the secret is that team and how that team operates together. And part of that secret, one of the things that we do is cross-training. We cross-train everything. Now, what that means is when we're doing medical day, what it means is there's blood all over the place, because trying to learn how to stick an IV is it's a lot tougher than it looks, folks. I'll just share that with you. But because we learn to do that, because we learn each other's jobs, we can't replace them. Don't get me wrong. That guy's he's still the medic. He's still the commo guy, the engineer. They're still the expert. But now I have this unique understanding of what his job is. I can help him. And I can be a pretty good apprentice level, maybe even novice level in helping him, because we've done this cross training. But I have a respect for what he does. And that right there, not to mention all the time we spend together training, shooting, physical training, you name it, whether it's diving, skydiving, climbing, all those things together. But I think the uniqueness of it is you take these, and I'll call it like it is, these alpha males who normally are the dude in charge of everything. Everything they've ever done up to this point, they've been that guy that's leading the pack. And now they're in a pack, a team full of those guys. And that's where the secret sauce happens, because now these guys mesh together, because the best leaders make the best followers. And when this happens, so now not only do I understand, I have a basic understanding of how you do your job, my weapons guy, my engineer, whatever, because we would spend all this time doing those trainings. I have an understanding of how you do your job. So now I respect all the training that you went through to get to that point. And I have a basic understanding of that. And it goes the same way, because they see me putting forth the effort of, oh, wow, that's really interesting. How does that happen? So now they're understanding me wanting to learn them. And when somebody wants to learn what you know everything about, you tend to respect them a bit more. So that builds this team cohesion where you're operating together and you become a cohesive unit. You're no longer 12 individuals operating together. You are a team, an operational detachment alpha that is a very powerful tool for the U.S. military, the U.S. government going forward, because a 12-man operational detachment in a guerrilla warfare scenario will train 800 guerrillas. Think about the odds on that. And then think about how you could apply that in your business, right? That experience, that understanding of, all right, how do we do this? Well, we got to take care of, let's stick in the unconventional warfare, the guerrilla warfare world. Mm-hmm. Heck, use Ukraine. Nah, it's not quite the right scenario. That's a different mission. But if Russia had succeeded and gone overrun Ukraine, well, Green Berets would go into Ukraine and build an 800-man force inside Ukraine to do what the French resistance were doing in World War II, and take it to the next level. So it's not just, a little sabotage here and a little shooting there, or a sniper or something like that. It goes to full-on scale. They grow to full. And when I say 800, that's not where you start. You build up to 800. And that's what Green Berets were designed to do, was to go behind enemy lines. And I'll share with you, because it's been long enough, and I'm sure it's not classified anyways at this point. When I first joined the Green Berets, it was right as the Cold War was ending. And my unit, my team's mission was a one-way mission. It was to go behind the Soviet Union's lines and destroy a radio tower in a country in Europe, take out the radio tower to break up their means of communication, and then stay there and build a guerrilla force. That was it. Pretty simple mission. Yeah. But the complications and understanding that have to come into play in order to be successful in that. You notice I didn't say and exfiltrate or walk out or anything like that. No, it was go in, blow that thing up, build a guerrilla force. That was it. And that's what Green Berets are trained to do. That is the bread and butter of the Green Beret. It is, all right, well, how do you give them a general idea of, hey, we want to do X. They are the guys that can figure out how to do X. They understand their expertise in a lot of the military skills, but those expertise lead them to applying it in a business. One of the other things, and I skipped over this completely because this is another piece of the Green Berets that is so important to their success, is Green Berets study cultures. They study and understand. They learn the culture, they learn the language so that they can understand and operate in that culture and language. But it also gives them the skill set of, I may not be in country X, Poland, Czech, Namibia, you name it. I may not be in that country, but because I've done it once and I've really focused on my mindset of how do I understand the culture? How do you understand me? Not how do I tell you what to do? How do you understand what I'm saying? And how would it best fit for you? That's the skill set that allows a Green Beret to step out of uniform and be successful in business, because they have all the tools and practices and systems and processes that have been proven on the battlefield. I mean, what better tool or process, testing ground, than to put somebody in harm's way to see how well that process works? That right there is the bread and butter. And then the Green Beret has this unique skill of understanding the culture and being able to mold in and develop the culture, or not develop the culture, but understand and adapt to the culture. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's one of those secret sauces that is very unique to the Green Berets. You know, that the other stuff, we could talk about the other stuff, you know, shooting bad guys in the face and those sort of things, living off the land.
Skiing backwards down mountains.
Yes, skiing backwards down mountains, all those sort of things. You know, the other special operations organizations, the SEALs, the Rangers, they do, in the Marines, they do something similar. They're all very good, and as is the Green Berets, all very good at high level soldier skills. Very, very good at that. Mm-hmm. The difference is what the Green Beret brings to the table in that cultural understanding and adaptability to any situation. Being able to take all that knowledge that they've learned and those high level skills that they've learned and adapt it to any culture, whether you drop me into Japan, Russia, Egypt. Some places may take me a little bit longer, but because I understood that, I have this inept ability now that I can walk in and start to analyze situations, analyze cultures, see how people are reacting, even with no prep work. See that and then start to adapt that, and that's a secret sauce that nobody else has and nobody else does, that the Green Beret brings to the table, particularly in a business world.
Yeah, a lot of great points there that I want to get to. I think one big thing that comes to mind is it reminds me of, this would have been spring of 2018 if I got my course calendar right. But I was taking a development economics class here at the University of Arizona. Little background on that. Development economics is huge for an agricultural business major, because how do you develop an economy? Well, you need food, right? So it's this big backbone thing when you talk about it. And at the time, I think you were still wrapping up some work in Niger or I'm sorry, Uganda, right? Mm-hmm. I think you just wrapped up those projects, if I remember right. And so we were talking some about, going to different countries and building up the economies and all these different things. And one of the fundamental lessons in development economics is what they call ABCD, asset-based community development. And I remember explaining this concept to you, and this is why I think it's an important thing to bring up, because you just went like, oh yeah, that's just the Green Beret approach. Like, that's just how you look at things. Asset-based community development is, from an economic perspective, you go and you say, here are the assets inside of the community, assets as far as the physical assets as well as the social capital and those type of things. And then you figure out, okay, how can I connect those things to build more assets, to sell something to another community, whatever it is, to just develop that community. And the whole thought process the entire time is that you're looking in the community, not outside. The reason that a lot of countries, and this is a whole other development economics rabbit hole, but the reason a lot of countries are so far behind from the modern world is because people went there, and instead of thinking asset-based community development, they went for extractive mm-hmm. resources, right? They were just pulling things out, so there was never an economy built up there. It's one of the reasons that the U.S. was able to successfully beat Britain, is because we had an economy of making ships. You can't just make a ship, we were making the ships. You had to have an economy to build a ship. You can't just go pull it out of the ground, right? Whereas all these other countries where they didn't have an economy, they had nothing to support themselves, right? So the economy is really important there. But the most important piece, of course, is using the community as it is. Don't go in and just say, hey, you guys really should start building, semiconductors. We really need semiconductors for all these chips and these computers and stuff. It's like, no. You don't need them to do that. Figure out what they have and then build from there. And then if they're building semiconductors in the future, we can get to that point. But you got to start off where they are now. And I think that's like a fundamental lesson when you're talking about there, in the Green Beret perspective, is you have to understand the situation as it is now and then build it up from there. I remember our conversation with Scott Mann. He was talking about like the stupidest thing you could do. And it's just funny because it's a lack of application of things that you already know. Is a veteran transitioning out and going, darn it, why isn't this the way I want it to be? Take it as it is and then build from there. And I think that is an important lesson when you start looking into business too. Too often in business, especially in the startup world, it's so easy to play what if. So easy to play, I wish that this, I wish we had more money. Oh gosh, if I had just said my sales pitch to that investor a little bit different, then we'd get this investment money and then I could do this. And it's so easy to have this like corrective lens when you're looking backwards and trying to understand your current situation. And the problem with looking at life through that corrective lens is that it's reality, right? You're looking at a fantasy. And in order to move forward, you have to understand the reality that's actually there. Because if you don't understand what's really going on inside your business because of all that wishful thinking, because of that corrective lens, then you're not going to be able to figure out that path forward. Now, I want to flip that to you real quick of how do you think people can apply those lessons in their business? I said the big abstract one. I took that from you already, so you got to give me a real answer. It's like, it's understanding where you are now so you can figure out how to move forward. Okay, that's big picture kind of stuff. What does that really look like? Rephrase it. What's the one tidbit you can get? What's the one Green Beret lesson for a business that someone can apply?
Well, it's about the people. And you've heard me say hundreds of times, mission first, people always. And I think it's understanding what your people need, your team members want to achieve, understanding them, and then sales as the leader, selling them on what it is you want to accomplish and getting them to buy into it. We were before we hit the record, when we were in the green room, we were talking about the change management book that you're reading, and I mentioned the book I read several years ago called Leading Change. And it gets down to the fundamentals of influencing people to do your bidding, it's the Tom Sawyer approach, right? Would you rather be the one whitewashing the fence? Or would you rather be the one teaching people how to whitewash the fence so that you can go whitewash the next fence and teach more people how to do it in that sort of sense? And the way I like to think about it, particularly as a Green Beret, is I like to work myself out of a job because I want to develop the skills. One of my passions is I give back to my veteran tribe. And the way I do it, that I'm super passionate about, is helping guys take the uniform off and find their new identity and establish their new adventure in life. Well, that right there is such a powerful piece to understand how they get there. Right? I don't tell them how to do it. I teach them techniques and processes, and I get them thinking so that they can create their own plan. Because you know what? If life was that easy, and I've joked about this before in some videos, here, just do these 4 things for happiness. How many times you've seen a headline, 5 steps to being happy, and you read that and you go, yeah, that's okay. It's not until you take it and create your own steps for happiness, your own steps to create your next adventure in life, that any of that makes sense. And as a Green Beret, you're able, one of the skills, go back to that skill, is influencing people to do that. Teaching, mentoring, training people to perform at the highest level. I think that's one of the reasons I was successful as a rugby coach. Having never played the sport in my life, I was able to develop the team with my experts, because I wasn't the expert, but I was surrounded by experts, but I was able to lead that organization and create a very successful organization that performed at the highest level. So that was Green Beret skills that I was applying.
I think there's a piece there, and it's actually going back a little bit, but you kind of hinted at it. And I think it's such a fundamental piece of not only the culture that you were talking about, but then I think it's also like it's a real mechanism. Going back to cross training, and with cross training, you talked about the respect that you get because you're looking at somebody else, you're understanding their work. In the business world, that is huge. One of the, oh my gosh, I don't know how many different times we've heard this story from people, but it is the idea of the CEO being like, oh, they're not doing anything. They're just coders. They're just, and because you don't understand how hard their job is, you don't understand what they're doing. That's why you get so many CEOs who make, or managers even, just who make that big mistake of going in and say, I need you to do X, Y, Z. And they can't physically do it because that's not how their job works. Or they can't do it with their bandwidth because you don't understand how hard their job is, those kind of things. Having that perspective is really important because it builds that fundamental layer of respect that we're all working towards this goal. You talk about a small team of Green Berets. Having that on the same page is a little bit simpler than getting everybody on the same page in a 500-person company. But you can still apply those same principles of understanding what other people are doing and why it's important. Unless you're talking about a really old company that is really arthritic in that kind of way, take Scott's Ritzheimer's word for it. Unless you're talking about an arthritic organization, everything's there for a pretty good reason, probably. And just because you don't understand the reason doesn't mean it's not important. And that's one fundamental piece of that cross-train, to build that mutual respect, which is just so good for the culture of an organization. But then there's another piece, and it goes back to our conversation with Dr. Quella, talking about creativity. There's all sorts of different types of creativity. The two big categories that we talked about in that episode was the rapid, the explosive innovation, and the incremental innovation. The incremental innovation comes from you because you have that understanding, you have that skill set. You talk about the medical guy. He can innovate because he's been working on it. He can make these little tiny changes. I don't know shit about medical stuff, so I can't even fill in an example. But it's like, oh, if I stitch like this, it's slightly better. Okay, whatever it is, right? He can figure out those incremental things. But the explosive innovation comes from the rest of the team. With you walking in and going, hey, man, you got this thing over here, and it looks like it could do. Again, I don't know anything about the medical stuff, but it's like you're going in and you're saying, look, I don't know. I'm humble enough to say that I don't know, but here's this weird idea I have. And when you have that mutual respect, that the guy knows that you understand his job, you're not belittling him, you're legitimately trying to help and improve it, that's where that explosive innovation comes. I'm sure I've told this story before, but it takes me back to my Verbi days with my co-founder, Norman. And he had the computer background, all that kind of stuff. I had probably taken throughout high school and college, maybe like 4 or 5 different computer type classes, some coding, some photoshopping, all those kind of different things, right? I remember I would go to him and I would always make this joke. It's like, I know just enough about computer stuff to ask you good questions and to come up with ideas. And I don't know how the reality of the implementation of these things necessarily, but because I don't know that, I can ask stupid questions. And those stupid questions are where you get that explosive innovation. So I think that's such an important piece of cross-training there that people need to apply to their business, of being able to look at those other things. And, it's really as simple as, oh my gosh, easy example. We talk about the sales and marketing split and how so many organizations have them so separate and they're in these boxes and they're not communicating with each other. The solution that everyone talks about with that is connecting those two so they can actually communicate, and then they can help each other to improve their product, help each other to improve their language, that things can move a little bit more easily. That's just one example. Those are just 2 pieces inside of your business that are separate, and you make that connection and you get this huge effect from it. You can do that with all sorts of different things. You can connect all these different dots, and some of them will reap huge rewards, some of them won't. But at the end of the day, you'll get that mutual respect, and you'll lay the seeds for that innovation. I think that's such an important piece.
Yeah, and you touched on a couple of things, but I would say the most important thing is culture, and establishing that culture. And if it doesn't exist, being the one who leads the change, being the one who's brave enough to lead that change, I think is what it's either that or you become assimilated with the crappy culture that you complain about, and you just be one of those people that sucks oxygen and gets, and does the minimum.
I want to ask you a question on that though. to take the Green Beret approach. What is the Green Beret's approach to change? Is it go shake your fist at it? Go yell at the boss? Is it to go quit because the job wasn't good enough? What's the approach there? I know it wasn't those, but
well, there's those are all approaches actually, and depending on the situation you're in, one of the things, a mantra that I adopted, and I don't remember where I got it from, whether I made it up or I was taught this many years ago, is that if something's broke, something's not working and needs to change, I need to go to the boss with a solution, and not just one solution. I need to provide 3 solutions, because one solution is biased to me. I need to provide 3 solutions to fix it. So that's one approach. The next approach is, how do you change culture? Because I get this from clients all the time. How do I change the culture? How do this is this, and really, you got 3 options in that too. You quit, you assimilate to it, or you be the one who leads the change. And the way you lead the change, which is back to your original question, the way you lead the change is you establish the standard and you become a leader in leading the change. That's why I call it leading the change. It's not just from the book. You have to be the one. If the culture is broken in your organization, the Green Beret approach is you lead the change. You develop your own insurgency, if you will, of the right culture. Even if you're just that little island that has it, there will be people who look from the outside in and try to, 1, destroy it because they're threatened by it, and 2, join it. And in an organization that's smart enough, with leaders that are smart enough to go, oh man, I didn't realize we'd gone that direction. Thank you for doing that. Let's work on changing our culture. Let's work on changing our culture so that we can innovate, so that we can do iterative innovation, so we can do explosive innovation. Because if everybody's afraid to throw out a good idea because they'll be embarrassed and shunned and made fun of because it was stupid, then guess what? That idea may have been actually stupid, but guess what happens when the idea that's not stupid comes up? Nobody wants to raise their hand and get shunned and made fun of and heckled, even if it is the $1 million idea.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and also, how often does that stupid idea spark an idea?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, why don't we just do this? And it's something that's completely impossible. It costs millions of dollars. It's illegal, whatever it is. Like, you're looking at your business, you're like, okay, let's do this thing. And it's like, dude, that is crazy. That's not even right. But hold up, we could do that same thing this way. And it's like, that's why those stupid ideas are so important, right? The other piece that I wanted to hammer down on a little bit more is what I would call it as like the amplification of force that you were talking about, of having these small group of people who are then spreading that influence out in order to get people to work towards it. Now, there's a misconception around this that I think that some people have when you start to talk about these type of things. And it's that, it's like even your Tom Sawyer analogy. It's like people don't necessarily like the Tom Sawyer character. It's a little, for like, where to put it, it can feel a little scummy. It can feel a little, used car salesman-y, that it's like we're not getting them onto the goal. But I think that's just the distinction I want to make there is it's just like if you read any psychology book, about, how to win friends and influence people, Nudge by Richard Thaler, whatever it is. You can read those books and you can go, this is how I'm going to solve all the world's problems. Or you can read those books and go, this is how I'm going to make a lot of money. And it's the same tool being applied 2 different ways. So I want to give that preface a little bit of it because I know what you're talking about. I know you're talking about applying it in a good way because it's about getting the buy-in from the people. You're not just getting them to go blow up a radio tower for you. You're getting them to blow up the radio tower, and I don't know, again, filling in blanks here. But it's like you're getting them to go do that work for you because they want the outcome that is coming, because they also see themselves inside of that vision. So can you talk a little bit about casting that vision, starting off first in the Green Beret area and then moving it into business from there?
Well, yeah, in-state was a critical aspect. In-state, and then later we massaged it a little bit into what's the effect we want to achieve. So there's this is going to test my memory bank. There's a great Green Beret acronym and it's CARVER, CARVER, and it stands. We would do a CARVER analysis of all targets, and like I said, here we go. We're gonna have to put it in the show notes, folks, because my memory is not that good on. It's been a long time, but CARVER stands for criticality, accessibility, recuperability, vulnerability, and ENR. There's two more that I'm drawing a blank on because I've hit max capacity. But the bottom line of that is when we would get a target, what we would do, back to the radio tower, we would do a CARVER analysis of it. And what the headquarters would tell us is we want it completely destroyed, unrepairable for 2 years. All right, good. Now I know what I'm working with, right? Because there could be a little washer on that thing, whatever that thing is, a generator that runs the radio tower, that is only made in Okinawa, Japan on Thursday in June. And if I take that, I don't even have to blow it up. I just take that washer out. Now that tower is down for a year, right? I mean, that's what CARVER is. And it's, how do I achieve the outcome that I want to achieve? So as a leader, I have to establish what's the outcome, what's the vision I want to achieve. How do we get there? That's the plan. What's the effect that we want to have in achieving that? And then I also have to sell that to my team. That goes back to what you were saying is the team members buying into it. They have to see themselves in the process. They have to see themselves in the future. They have to see themselves in that mission. And even better, if we're talking about a guerrilla warfare, they have to see themselves on the outcome of them achieving the overthrow of the oppressive government. That right there is motivation for them to take the action. Same thing with your team. They have to see who or how they fit in to what the company is going to be doing, what your organization is going to be doing in the future. They got to see themselves there also. So you have to, as a leader, you have to have a vision, and then you have to sell that vision to your team so that they see themselves. They create their own vision, but that vision is aligned with your vision. It is not, they're just taking your vision. It's not that. It's not a memorization. It's back to what I was talking about earlier. They have to see themselves. They have to create their own vision for their future that aligns with it. So it's a converging effort, if you will. I was going to say parallel, but it's not, because it converges at that vision. When we achieve that vision, I'm seeing myself there, standing right next to my boss, standing next to Bob and you and Fred, who we've all worked together to get to that outcome and achieve that vision.
And I think one important piece there is you're talking about it's aligned at the end point. It's not necessarily aligned every single step of the way. And I think a lot of the time in business, and I've made this mistake, I've told this story before, so I don't need to go all the way into it, but with Cobra Valley Indoor Farms, my co-founder there, that we had very similar visions on that first step. But then you go about 10 orders of effect down the line, he was in a whole different, it wasn't even the same sport. Like we weren't even playing the same sport at that point. But the first vision was the same. And so we thought we were aligned, but we weren't. And I think that's the trap that people fall into, is that you start looking at that short-term goal and think, oh, okay, we're aligned on this short-term goal, therefore we're aligned. No, if you're not aligned at the end goal, then you're not aligned, right? And even if there's some disagreement, I mean, shoot, think about, there's so many different examples that are rolling through my mind, but just think about any situation where a team has a disagreement about the way to go about something. Take a rugby example. I'm not sure that we should run make it my number right, a 3-4-1. I want to do a 1-2-3 I got my counting up to 8. Sorry, public math. But anyway, 1, 2, 2, 1, whatever it is, like all these different layouts that we can look at the strategy. I can say, Coach, I disagree with that. I don't think we should do it this way. But I'm never actually going to turn my back on the team, even if we're doing a different strategy, because I want to win the game. That's what we're here for. I want to go, national championship, state championship, whatever it is. That's the goal that we're all aligned on. Those little things can change, and they should change because you should be adjusting as things go. You're not always going to be aligned every single step of the way. But if you're aligned to that top vision, that final goal, then those missteps don't matter. And it gets to, one big thing we've talked about before is that like diversity of background, diversity of thought process, diversity. All of those things are great as long as you're working in the same direction. As soon as you're not working in that same direction, things fall apart, right? We can have a different view of how we want to, accomplish this goal. But if the goal is the same, then we can come together along the way and we can find, get into lockstep as we're moving forward. I think that's such an important piece there. I want to throw it over to you because I know we've been talking for a while on this, and you've been doing a lot more talking than me. So grab your sip of water because I got one more question for you, which is just, we've covered the cross training. We talked about the amplification of force. What do you think is the other thing that sets Green Berets apart from other organizations? And I don't even want to take off the military shackles of it. Literally just comparing to a big business or anything else, like what makes it so different? Give me one more differentiator, because I know you probably got about 5 more in your pocket.
Trust, because the commonality of our background, that builds instant trust. But not to say that everybody's got to go through the Q course to be trusted, right? You can't put your business through the Q course or the ringer, although there are some things you can do out there in that sense, and those are always great team building events. But trust is so important. And how do you build that trust? You build that trust by starting off trusting people and giving them the opportunity to perform, giving them the opportunity to do their job, not over supervising, not micromanaging in the business world, and really in any world. I mean, if you're holding a leadership position and you're micromanaging and not allowing the members of your team to do their job, to do the job you hired them to do, then you got to ask yourself, what are you doing? Why are you doing their job? And who's doing your job? So when you start thinking about it in that sense, I would trust it's a simple thing to say. It's a extremely difficult thing to uphold and do. Otherwise, your organization will not be successful. You will not have true cohesion. Trust is the glue that holds them all together.
It's kind of, I don't know if we ever put this together this way, but it's kind of that fear of failure prevents you from ever actually, performing at a high level. If you're never trusting somebody, then you have that fear of failure. You have a fear that they're not going to do their job. And then you have this fear on top of it that failure is going to lead to the end of the company. You're going to be embarrassed. You can go down that rabbit hole all day. But at the end of the day, you're just scared of that one individual failure. And because you're so scared of that failure, you're not letting yourself trust that person. Because you don't trust them, they're probably going to fail because they don't have the full capacity to do their job. So I love that there.
Yeah. So to flip it around, what'd you learn today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me, and this is one of those, it's always funny when we have these conversations, because to me, so many of these things are ingrained in me from just being around you my whole life. And then every now and then you'll say something, I'm like, oh, that's why I think that way, type of thing. And for me today, it was the 3 solutions. And you can ask anyone I've worked with in my entrepreneurial ventures. I hate when you come to me with a problem. Don't come to me with a problem, come with me with a solution. And now I can take it to the next level and bring me 3 solutions, because that is just so much better. And that's, really the approach I'm thinking about, talking organization in the living room with my wife, with our new house, going through that with Miss Jessica. I don't go in and say, hey, here's how we should do this. It's, hey, so we can put the TV over there. We can put the TV over there. We can put the TV over there. And then you're laying out all those different solutions. Because when you give somebody that, you can actually look at the full breadth of the situation. When you only give one solution, it's biased. And so that was a big lesson for me today. How about you? What'd you learn?
Well, it was the review of the asset-based economics. I love that. I mean, it's one of those, oh yeah, sort of things. But when you put it in the academic sense and the higher understanding, it makes perfect sense. And having spent that time in Africa and watching the countries just get drained of their resources, continuing to this day, there's a lot of truth to that, and a lot of truth to why those countries continue to struggle. So, I think at this point, you got something?
No, I was just gonna say, I was just shaking my head because I was just thinking of it's a sad thing because it's like this is you can look at the economics of it, and then you can also look at countries that are having extractive policies once again, and it's just like, oh crap, like it's gonna be it gets my heart going a bit, and that's why I love my development economics, and I have a lot of passion on that.
There's still hope. There's always hope.
Yes, sir.
So we normally say, how do we get in touch with you? Thank you and all that stuff. But I just want to remind folks that, if you're looking to develop leaders in your team because you understand that great leaders make the best followers in an organization, then go to findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. Schedule a time with me. We'll do a quick analysis of where you're at, where your business is at, and whether or not GBLP can have that effect that you're looking to achieve, that effect that will mitigate the sigmoid curve drop-off, will actually eliminate the drop-off and mitigate the plateau. We want to break through and continue on that positive hockey stick approach to growth in your business. So go to findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis show. Then thank you for joining us today. Oh, gosh, that's what happens when you write an intro for a guest and then you try to skip one line and then skip two lines. All right, so thank y'all for listening to the Cam and Otis show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis show on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time. And I am officially 260 for 264, it seems like. There's another miss.